Sunt 70 de ani de bune relații comerciale între România și Austria. Suntem aici să creștem împreună și rămânem aici pentru timp îndelungat. Declarația aparține lui Gerd Bommer, consilierul comercial al ambasadei austriece la București. Avem practic o căsnicie, una chiar de durată. Comparația a fost repetată de invitatul meu atunci când a vorbit despre investițiile pe termen lung pe care le fac la noi. Sunt Cileacu. Începe Pașaport diplomatic. Gerd Bommer, a diplomat. Welcome to the Diplomatic Passport, and you brought us for this edition into the mountains.
Yeah, into my home, so to say. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And actually, I was born and raised in the mountains, and now we are here up in the mountains, and it's the area where I love to be. And you know, it's kind of the the little change and the exchange and the balance for being within people all the time, and all the evenings also within people. Out here, I can be alone on my own, and it's very nice. I love it in the nature. So well, that's how I grew up.
But okay, that's a very nice story. But we'll talk less about nature in this program because, as I said, it's Diplomatic Passport, and you represent Austria for the commercial relation in Romania. So since we come up here on a very off-road trip, you took us. It was quite bumpy. I have to ask.
Sorry for that.
No, it's okay. It's into the mountains. It's supposed to be like this. I have to ask how bumpy is to do business relationship and business in Romania.
Well, actually not that bumpy at all, as you saw it today when we were driving up here on the mountain. It's actually very smooth. We had long-standing relations, the Austrians and the Romanians, and we've done very well. For the Austrian companies, it's actually very good to come into Romania. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential, and a lot of growth, which makes it easier to come into a market. And culture-wise, we kind of have an understanding. So for the Austrian companies, it's much easier to, build up their operations here in Romania and to grow in Romania. And we actually want to grow in Romania and stay here for the long term.
Well, since we are in the mountains and we can see some trees around us, of course I have to ask you about the wood scandal. Austrian company was in the middle of this accusation about illegal cutting wood and so on and so forth. How do you see it?
I've been here since 2016, so for 4 years by now, and I've been working very closely with all the companies in the wood sector, and we saw all the measures that they've taken, kind of CSR measures or measures in kind of ethical compliance and compliance with the sustainability with the nature. And what I've seen is very, very diligent and is very, very consistent. So I really have to take a stance for the companies, saying that in the years that I've been here, I didn't see anything that has been done wrong. I actually have to say it in a different way. The Austrian companies are here, the market leaders in the wood sector, in the wood processing sector, and to be honest, they have a high turnover, they have huge exports, and they make profit here. They make a good profit here. Do you really think that they would risk this profit by doing something wrong, something illegal, and then because of that losing all the business? Especially one company has only operations here in Romania, and that would be really, disastrous for them if they really did something illegal, and then based on the illegal actions that they've done, they would be put out of business. So I highly doubt that they would go that far, and I'm in contact with all the CEOs and with all the people there and the compliance departments, and they're very, very strict.
You are working a lot abroad, all over the world, but before you arrived in Romania, you were in Doha, in Qatar.
Yes.
And of course, they do a lot of businesses in gas industry. We have gas here in the Black Sea, especially the new discoveries. How do you see this market?
I think it's going to be a game changer, not only for Romania, but for the whole European Union in terms of gas security that the European Union is going to have. It's another gas supplier, because you were self-sufficient, and Romania started to import gas, which is a bit of a dramatic move in the last 2 years. And with the exploration in the Black Sea, you can be a net gas exporter. Not only cover your own demand, but be a net gas exporter, and that would be great for Romania. You have a lot of income from that, a lot of license revenues and so on. So I think that it's a good thing, a good step forward. Of course, the exploitation should be at a level so that it's sustainable and that it's there for generations.
The office you work for, Advantage Austria, it turns 70 years this year, actually. So how did this evolve in Romania?
Our office was opened on the 1st of May 1950, so 70 years ago, and this is why we have now the big celebrations about the 70 years Austrian-Romanian economic relations. We have to emphasize that the office in Romania, in Bucharest, was the 5th office that we opened up after London, Paris, Rome and Frankfurt, which is kind of fascinating. It shows also the importance that Romania has for us Austrians and the focus that we give on Romania. And in the 70 years, of course, there was a game changer in 89, 90. One has to say is that the Austrians have been pioneers, coming in very early in the 90s, and then investing heavily end of the 90s and in the beginning of the 2000s. In the financial crisis, 7, 8, 9 was of course then a bit of a problem, but you could see also that the Austrians stayed here, plus they kept on investing also afterwards. So we have new investors all the time. We have a construction material investor who invested 25 million euros in the last 2 years here in Romania. New factories being taken over, built up. Of course, also in the oil and gas sector, there's permanent investments that are done. It's nearly €1 billion euros a year. And those investments also bring us into the special position that we are in today, that we're one of the biggest investors, if we count in reinvestments, the biggest investor in Romania.
And how would you reply to those who say that perhaps Austria is coming in Romania to invest in order to take advantage and to export profit?
I guess what you've seen up to now is that we've been here for 70 years. We stayed for 70 years, also the companies, and it's especially the performance and the achievements of the companies and the engagement of the companies. They have been here and they're all still here. So you see that they're fighting their way through and that they're working with the market, they're growing with the market, and they're growing, and that is a bit of a difference to other markets where we go into a country and then we work basically for the domestic market. The Austrian companies here work on the domestic market strongly, also back home to exports to Austria, but they export from here. And that is a huge value that Romania gets, and I think this also proves that we're here for the long term. It's exports that we would not want to risk, and also the investments have been very, very high. So also that figures will not be at risk at all, and we're in the market for good. We're going to stay here the long term, and the Austrian companies actually enjoy working in the Romanian market and see a lot of potential in it.
And is it easy to work in our system? Because as a Romanian, I can say we have a lot of bureaucracy, we have corruptions, we have everything that will make everything go harder, let's say, for somebody who wants to open a business. From your perspective, because you do business in Romania, I don't, how it's like?
Now, of course, the opening up a business and opening up an investment is a bit of a topic with the red tape. So bureaucracy is really strong. Getting building permits for the factories and then getting the operating permits partially takes longer than it takes in some other countries, or as we are used to it in Austria. Mm-hmm. And that is something that you have to deal with. It's, how to say, it's one of the downsides of investing here, but look at it from another point of view. It's a complete advantage and upside, because many companies from different countries do not come in here because they say it's too difficult. You know, it takes me 2 years to get the building permit, the operating permit, and to actually be able to start up. The Austrians say we're anyway here for the long term, so if it takes 2 years, that's perfectly fine, and we go the whole way and we do it according to the rules.
And from your point of view, what is the hard part? I mean, okay, you do have the patience to do everything according to the rules, but isn't it a bit annoying at some point? I mean, how much patience can one have?
10 years, I can tell you that, because I'm working on cases which have been going on for 10 years, especially in mining licenses. That's where we've been waiting for a long time. That's specifics that the market here has, but for the 10 years the companies worked on annual licenses. But overall, one has to understand that if you have like a shareholding company, that the board back home in the supervisory board will only allow the investments if you have a security for the long term. And that's what's missing. That's what makes it so difficult. It's, you know, the Austrians, they would actually stick with it and they would keep on investing and go the whole way. But then if the bureaucracy keeps it back and your supervisory board says you can't do it like this, that is very, very difficult. But also that will be overcome. We assist the companies, and the government is now very, very eager to actually facilitate the growth of the investors, of the foreign investors here, and also the Romanian investors, of course. And that helps us right now a bit with everything starts moving and infrastructure investments and and the schemes that are coming out. So we are on a good track, I guess.
Since we are still in the pandemic of COVID-19 and everybody's economies were hurt, of course Romania economy is hurt as well, but if we hear our authorities, they say that we are less hurt than, let's say, other countries of EU. Would you agree with that affirmation, or?
Yes, definitely. Romania will not even go into a technical recession, so you only had one quarter with 2.4% of GDP minus, which is not too much compared to the European average, which is at 7-8%, and not a recession. Plus, I personally actually think that you're going to have a strong growth next year, Romania, that it's going to be one of the markets that gets out the best way. And I think one also has to look at the fact, if you talk about the Brexit, for instance, the countries that are the least hurt by the Brexit are Romania, with less than 1% of GDP, and Austria with less than 2% of the GDP as kind of at stake with the Brexit. So we see that our economies are, built on different pillars. It's a strong domestic market, there is tourism, there is industry, there is the service industry, everything is growing. And I guess this potential, this big potential right now in Romania that gives it actually the chance to grow faster next year, and we hope for the very best and hope for mutually successful growth.
Well, in this optimistic note, I have to ask you, since again I remind everyone that we arrived here drive by you on a very bumpy road. What is this passion for off-road, and how often you do it here in Romania?
Obviously, as you saw right now, I'm not doing off-roading in kind of the illegal way, but I'm always on tracks, and when I go with my friends I'm always on tracks. But I'm several weekends every year I'm out on the mountains. I like then go a bit off-road and then hike up on a mountain or something like this. And that year in July was first time for 9 days off-roading, overlanding, whatever you could call it, in areas like Kulibica, Rodna, Pasarodon, Borșa, or also then Cileacu at the very end. And that was really, really nice. I loved it, and I loved the views in Izvoarele Sucevei, which were really nice. We had a wonderful camping spot, and for me it's kind of, the nature, the air, the good air that you breathe, and then being out there at night, cooking out there at night and being together with your friends, just like 2-3 people, and not always the hustle and bustle from Bucharest and the big events where you have 200 people. Like myself, I also do those events. So you can be out there, and it absolutely calms me down. And I really can feel it also, and that was in Romania actually the strongest feeling of the calming down, slowing down massively and being completely relaxed. And I loved it very much. I loved the nature. You got a very beautiful country, I have to say that. And you got very different landscapes, and that makes it even more interesting.
Well, we will be talking about tourism, because you did promise us to take us to a winery as well, which is an Austrian investment. So I suggest to leave the mountains and go into the winery part now.
Let's do that. Wonderful. That's a good idea, and I hope the road is not that bumpy there.
Okay. Gerd, we left the mountains and now we are in a vineyard that belongs to an Austrian. But then again, besides the investment, this type of vineyards are used in your home country in Austria for tourism. Do you think we can develop something like that here in Romania, and how can we do it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously one can do it because we show it in Austria, but it's usually not one vineyard alone that can do it. This vineyard is an Austrian-Romanian cooperation, so to say. It's Austrian and Romanian investors. They already do a good job on that, so they get a lot of guests, they get buses visiting, doing the wine tastings and so on. What actually is needed, and what we have done in Austria, but I'm 48 years old, and 40 years ago the hotels were working one against the other and not doing anything else, is more or less destination marketing. So what you have to do is you have to join the forces, and this vineyard and the next vineyard, they have to go together and try to attract the tourists together. And that works pretty well. So we see, for instance, in Austria, in the southern Styrian wine street, as it is being called, that it's full of tourists every fall, and then also in the springtime. Winter's obviously too cold in Austria in certain areas, but they do it like this. So in certain villages in Burgenland, in the very eastern part of Austria, where you have a lot of vineyards, they do kind of the cellar days, where you can go down to the cellars, you can taste all the new wines, and that attracts a lot of people. That also attracts, of course, tourism, because in the end you have accommodations, you have overnights, they go for lunches, dinners and so on. People spend time, and if you have a bit more than kind of also other touristic opportunities, like, you know, hiking or whatever it is, and you combine all of that in terms of destination marketing, then you can do a lot.
And do you feel like something like that is starting here in Romania?
Yes, definitely. I mean, you see a very great example. Brașov, also Sibiu or Timișoara are examples where you see that they're working together and they're trying to, you know, brush up the city, beautify the city, and do one concept together. And in Brașov, Poiana Brașov, and all the surrounding villages, or Bran, Fundat, Moieciu, you already see that those villages that work together get much more many more tourists than all the other areas. So it pays off to work together and to do one destination marketing, and goes a lot into social media, TV in other countries and so on. And this marketing already helped. Brașov is the city with the biggest tourism. So we see, yes, it can work out. And there's a lot of other areas in Romania, in the mountains, or also like Danube Delta, or like the Black Sea coast, where you could do a lot more in terms of destination marketing and attract foreign tourists as well, because the Romanian tourism is partially working very well, with the Black Sea, if you look at that, but you could also attract many more international tourists, and I guess Romania is going to be very successful like that in the next few years to come.
But how can you convince people to work together? Because we had communism in this country, and everybody, when started to have its own property, wanted to keep it for itself. We have a lot of fences as well in this country. It's a culture of protecting what is mine, what is my own. Yeah. How difficult is to make people to work together and to make them understand that if they work together, they can accomplish more?
I mean, this is what can be seen also in Austria. So, as I said, 40 years ago, I grew up in the mountains in Austria, in the south of Salzburg, in a skiing area. And there we also developed the understanding that you have to work together. So now there's a lot of consulting companies that are working, and an Austrian consultant is in here. Actually, the son of the Austrian president lives with a Romanian, who married a Romanian wife, lives here in Tulcea, and is a tourism consultant. And if you talk to those people, you get much more understanding. They can tell you about culture behind, about which way you can cooperate, how you can, you know, revenue share models. We started up, our office, for instance, we started up with the Cupă de Schi Austriacă. That was the first step. The second step was then a roundtable, and the third step now is a conference about winter tourism. And this is where we go in and bring someone from that ski area, telling like, how does it work when you put together all the revenues of a ski area, which means the Prahova Valley, for instance, together with, I don't know, Mrășnov, Poiana Brașov, and so on, and you put it all together. How do you create a bigger revenue stream, and how do you distribute it afterwards in a way that everybody has more than before? And this is what we can show by international consultants and by examples that are already working, because you already have wonderfully working examples here in Romania.
We did travel together here. You actually brought us to this place, and on the road here you keep on telling me about the marriage that Austria has it with Romania. O să întreb în română, de ce aleg austriecii să vină în România și mulți dintre ei chiar să rămână aici?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts off with the Romanians being very warm people and very welcoming people. I mean, that makes it much easier. But we have a long-standing history which we had together, which we shared together. And I guess the foreign influences in Austria. Austrian population is a mix of cultures, and I guess that gave us a bigger understanding. And this is also what makes it easier for us to live and work and do investments in foreign countries and have success there. But Romania makes it especially easy for you because of the culture of the people, the warmth of the people, welcoming, and all the business opportunities. You have a huge potential in Romania, and that made it very attractive for us Austrians to kind of come here and work with you. And we did, you know, it was kind of seamlessly.
Can you say a slogan in Romanian language perhaps for the Austrian to keep on coming?
Well, I really have to, I never thought about that.
Well, you have the opportunity now. As you said, in Romania there are many opportunities. I guess this is one of them.
Cred că austrieci îți place mult România și natura în România.
Okay.
It did not work out, I know.
But regarding the tourism coming over from Austria, because I know that a lot of Romanians are going to your country, especially for winter
Yes.
holidays and skiing. You have very good and famous skiing resorts. But the other way around, how much the Austrians prefer to come to Romania to do their holidays?
So we're getting closer now, and as we're talking, I'm getting closer to kind of the slogan that you actually wanted, because
Okay,
you have to know that for the Austrian tourist, Romania is kind of a white spot on the map. Romania is unknown. You don't have like a very positive image, you don't have a very negative image. It's kind of a neutral image, and people don't know what you have in terms of nature or what you have in terms of Black Sea and so on. And I guess the Discover Romania could be something, you know, the wooden churches, the monasteries that you have in Romania, Moldova, or Maramureș, a beauty in itself. That is something that people can discover. So discover something unknown is what Romania could actually build upon.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la ora obișnuită 11:30 și în reluare sâmbătă de la 22:30. La revedere!